Hey, it's Brock here from Rock Hill Farms, and today I'm going to do a comparison between a backhoe and a front hoe. So I've got this 20-acre property we just bought last year, and we have a ton of plans for it. I've already dug a 170-foot trench for running a new bathroom up to this shop. We just finished that. Right here I've got 400 foot of French drain pipe. Next to that I've got this conduit that I'm getting ready to use to run electrical wire between these two buildings. And I'm digging a pond. I've ordered a new building that's going to set right back here. That's 30 by 50 building. And so I'm using this backhoe and front hoe and bucket and whatever else I can figure out to dig all the time. And a lot of people question whether or not it's worth it to buy a backhoe for a tractor. On this unit, I mean, this is a very nice setup backhoe. It's quick on, quick off, but it's a $9,000 backhoe. That's a lot of money to invest. So on the front of the tractor, I have the Untitled Front Hoe bucket that can also be used for trenching and digging and stump removal and those types of things. So I want to use this video to compare what you can do with one, what you can do with the other, the pros and the cons. We're actually going to do a couple of projects, and then I'll give my opinion on whether it's worth it to spend an extra $8,000 on a backhoe, or if you're better off trying to get a lot of work done with this front hoe and, you know, maybe rent a mini excavator when you need it. So let's get started. Alright, before I get too far into actually digging anything today, I'll just show you what I'm talking about when I say front hoe bucket. So this is the Untitled pallet fork frame, or I'm calling it a pallet fork frame. It's just the Untitled attachment frame because you can put basically anything on it. Once you buy this frame, you can buy relatively inexpensive pallet forks, a fairly inexpensive bucket for the front, you know, your grapples, snowplow. They've got a variety of stuff that goes onto this one frame. And the advantage there is, once you have the frame, you don't have to buy an entire unit every time. You just buy pieces that go on it. So, in terms of the front hoe bucket, it is a stump bucket, is what I mainly call it. It's 1/4 inch, it looks to me like about 1/4 inch thick steel all the way around. It slides onto this frame. I think it's about 16 inches long and about 12 inches wide. It's got serrated teeth on the front. So the other day, I was digging out some big rocks over here. I mean, big rocks out of the yard. And I set this right down on top of a rock, angled straight down, lifted the tractor off of the ground with it, and then tried to curl. And I bent a couple of these teeth, so I had to straighten them out this morning. So obviously you can use this as a stump bucket, you can use it as a rock digging bucket, but what's interesting to me and what we're going to try today is using it as a trencher, because it's about 1 foot wide at the base and then gets out to maybe 16 inches wider at the top, which is a great size for a trench for something like I'm doing with this electrical today. And the way it's set up and the way you use it with the loader, you can very quickly get to your digging point and your dumping point and back to your digging point without switching seats on the tractor or swiveling a seat or however the tractor backhoe is set up. And if you want your trench to be the same depth all the way, the same width all the way, and follow the grade, this seems like a great way to achieve that. Whereas you're constantly, with a backhoe, you're constantly having to meter the depth of your dig. So, just something to be mindful of. And the fact that this angles out as it goes up means that your trench should angle out as it goes up a little bit. Which it's not a lot, but it is there. So, that's kind of another thing to keep in mind. Now I'll show you the backhoe on this tractor real quick. Then we'll look at some projects I've already dug. We'll dig a couple new projects and see what we come up with. Alright, so this is the 270B backhoe from John Deere that fits on the large frame 2 Series John Deere tractors. It's a quick attach backhoe. It's a powerful unit. It can dig about 6 foot deep, which I've proven out by digging some massive holes. Down here I dug out a huge stump. that the tree stump that was left behind weighed more than my tractor can lift, which is about 1,800 pounds. So it was pretty big, and I was able to dig that out with this backhoe. I dug this 170-foot trench that was 4 and 5 foot deep in places. So it's a good strong unit for what it is. You know, it's not a mini excavator, but for a tractor backhoe, it's a good unit. It's got its own seat. It's got the outriggers, your controls here. Pretty standard unit. So let's go take a look at some jobs. Alright, so one of the more popular videos on this channel is me clearing this area with the stump hoe bucket. So you can see it's all wooded behind me. This was wooded also. There were a bunch of trees like 4-inch diameter just all across this area. So I took that stump hoe bucket and I ripped out all these trees, made a little patio here. That stump hoe bucket did a great job on some pretty good sized trees here, but it especially excels at the little bitty trees that you can just pop out. Pop, 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 pull them all out. Whereas using that backhoe for that same job, it's more powerful. It can pull out a bigger tree, but it's not going to be as fast to maneuver around the area. Because, like I said earlier, you're either dragging the backhoe with the bucket, you know, and this is a 20-foot area, that's slow, or you're getting off of the backhoe and moving the tractor that way all the time. Let's go take a look at some other projects. Alright, so I'm down here at the driveway and I'm getting ready to take a lot of that French drain pipe, and I'm going to run a drainage system that drains off the hill, down the yard, to here, and all the way down the driveway to the ditch. Water already tries to flow here because it comes down the hill, then it meets the crown of the driveway and can't cross that, so it has to flow down here. So this turns into a river. It also kind of turns into a lake in this area over here when it's been really rainy. So I'm going to dig a trench. I think this is probably about 250 feet long. I'm going to dig that 250-foot trench for that pipe. In this case, it would be a lot faster to dig it with the front hoe bucket. I could maintain the grade easier, and the only question is whether or not that trench left by the front hoe bucket is deep enough. I kind of think for this spot it will be, but for up here it wouldn't be. I need a lot more depth as I come down this hill. So this would be a case where the front hoe bucket might work here, but to do the whole project I'd probably need to get a backhoe. So here's one area we're going to dig out today. This shop used to end at the corner. There was no concrete pad, and the previous owner set this building up with gutters that ran down to these drain lines, and then the drain lines run out here. The water was supposed to run down the hill. Well, I put a concrete pad on the front, and then I built rock up to the even with that concrete pad, and we basically created a dam right here that holds all that water in, makes it a nasty swampy area. It also makes every bit of this area right in front of the shop a mud pit. We do a lot of loading and unloading here. I don't know if you can really tell, but all of this is muddy, and it kind of stays muddy and nasty. So I want to get this cleaned up. I originally thought about putting a French drain here, but I kind of think it's overkill for this. All we need is just a path to get that started, because this is a pretty steep hill. It's going to wash down. Alright, so you can see here that this is soft and it's very easy digging, but I could easily just trench in a straight line at a consistent depth on level ground. The only problem I was having here was the clay sticking into the stump bucket. I actually had to get out a couple times and knock that out throughout the day. But for a level little spot like this and a shallow trench, it works great. I could not have finished connecting this all the way up though, because I didn't have the reach and I couldn't access that point. Now this spot specifically I end up filling back in later because it's before the outlet from the drain water, but I needed to open it up initially just to get that water to flow. And as I edit this, it's about 12 hours later and this drained water steady all day long. Every time I'd come through, every couple hours, come through this area, it was still running off. Now just kind of repeating what I've already said, but this gives me that extra reach to get further up there, but I dug it deeper than I wanted to. All I really wanted here was that little bite I was taking with the front hoe bucket. Which, you know, wasn't a big deal. It just required me to come back and smooth out the bottom of the trench. So what you're seeing right now is my first time ever trenching with this bucket. And I didn't have very good visibility, which is something that you adapt to. I didn't have a spotter to tell me where I was hitting. And it's hard to see right here, but I'm on a pretty steep upward slope. And I'm wanting the trench to be shallow down at the end I'm at now and deeper up here by the concrete. So there's a learning curve with anything like this you do, and I'm sure I'll get better at it, but as you can see, it is making the trench pretty straight and pretty quickly. you can tell, I'm probably not the most experienced operator. Made a couple mistakes on the way I dug this. First of which being getting it way too deep up at that end. But it is draining the water off. And I don't mind showing my mistakes because I figure I'm not the only guy with the tractor who's not a 20-year experienced operator. So I don't want this to be a trench the way it is. I want it to be a gradual swale. So I'm going to go get the regular bucket on and see if I can smooth out the edges of this. And then some of this extra dirt up here is going to get pushed in the hole up at that end. I think it's going to end up doing the job, even though I was a little bit clumsy in the way I dug the hole. And hopefully it showed some of the challenges of each of these ways of digging. The only video I've seen with digging a trench with the front hoe bucket, they were wanting a trench that was the same depth all the way. And I feel like I can easily do that. Trying to have this be 8 inches deep at that end and 0 here, I found to be more challenging, especially since you didn't have great visibility. Now if I had a spotter here who could tell me, you know, where my angle was at, it would really help. But you do what you can. I've got someone coming to help with the other trench later, but on this one I was just on my own, no big deal. But even though that trench is about 8 inches deep here, it's still probably 2 foot higher up at the bottom of that trench than it is at ground level here. So after I get this smoothed back out with the bucket, I think it'll do what it was intended for. Alright, so right now it's going to drain that water really well, but it's more of a swale than I want because we're going to drive across here to get into our parking area. So what I'm going to do, I've got 40 tons of clean 2-inch rock that's being delivered at the start of the week. So I'm going to have, when that rock gets here, I'm just going to put some of it into this until I get the depth of swale that I'm looking for. And that should still let the water flow more freely through there. If this doesn't work the way I think it will, I'll end up putting some of that French drain in right here. Alright, so the point of this video was to compare a backhoe attachment to a front hoe attachment. Hopefully I've done that for you. Obviously, you can accomplish more with the backhoe, but it's a $9,000 attachment. Whereas if you already have the Artilian system, that front hoe bucket is $300. So that will not replace this. But if you only occasionally want to use your backhoe for, you know, digging out stumps and stuff like that, stump bucket, right? If you're only digging an occasional shallow trench, stump bucket. And then if you're using a stump bucket for all of that, you can rent a mini excavator, you know, once a year when you want to do some serious digging. On the other hand, if you're digging constantly like I am, you know, this is a lot cheaper than buying a mini excavator. And to me, the argument of, oh, I can just rent one every time, if I'm digging very often at all, renting is a hassle. You know, you might be ready to work and all their units are rented out, or you have to spend a day going and getting it and taking it back. And, you know, I have this entire machine for convenience. If we're only talking economics, you know, I've got over $50,000 in everything that I've got on this tractor. If we're just talking economics, I could rent a skid steer every time I want to level my driveway or move rock. You know, I could pay someone to dig these stumps out or grind the stumps out. I like to work outside with equipment, and I like convenience. I want it to be there when I need it, and that's why I have the backhoe. But, you know, everyone's situation's different, and if you just want to do some smaller work, that front hoe bucket's going to save you a ton of money. So just something to look at. I appreciate you taking time to watch this video. In just a minute, you'll see links on the screen to a couple more of our videos, and I'll see you next time.